Hey guys, thanks for clicking enjoy the video, like, and sub for more. Hey Reddit. This is a long story, but I promise it's worth it. This tale involves my frustratingly inconsiderate neighbor, who I'll call Karen, for reasons that will soon become obvious, and her lovable, overly friendly, but absolutely enormous dog, Rocky. If you're ready for a story of persistence, creative problem solving, and one of the pettiest bits of revenge I've ever pulled off, buckle up. So, a little background about me first. I moved to this neighborhood about 2 years ago. I'd saved for years to buy a house in a nice area with friendly neighbors, well-kept lawns, and that quiet, suburban peace I'd been dreaming of. When I finally found this place, I fell in love with it. It was a small but charming home with a neat little lawn in front and a cozy backyard. Most of my neighbors are wonderful, friendly, helpful, and respectful. The first few months were blissful, and I thought I'd found my forever home. And then, about 6 months ago, Karen moved in next door. Karen seemed nice enough at first. She'd wave when we crossed paths, and once, she even brought over some cookies to introduce herself, which I thought was a nice gesture. I noticed her dog, Rocky, a huge, fluffy Newfoundland who was friendly and incredibly sweet. I even petted him a few times when she was out walking him. Rocky is one of those dogs that you can't help but adore. He's got this happy, drooling grin and a tail that wags nonstop. But as I soon discovered, Rocky came with a big problem. He's a very large dog with an equally large appetite, and, well, what goes in must come out. It started small. Every now and then, I'd see a present left on my lawn after Karen walked Rocky. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, things happen, and it's easy to miss something every once in a while. But after the third or fourth time, I started to notice a pattern. Every time Karen walked Rocky past my house, she'd let him relieve himself on my lawn, and she never cleaned up after him. I couldn't believe it. I started watching more closely, and sure enough, every morning and evening like clockwork, Karen would let Rocky do his business right there on my grass, completely ignoring the community rule about cleaning up after your pets. I tried to handle the situation calmly at first. I told myself Karen probably didn't realize how frustrating this was, or how it was affecting me. So one day, I walked over to her while she was outside with Rocky and said, "Hey, I've noticed Rocky likes my lawn for his bathroom breaks. Would you mind picking up after him?" Karen looked at me with this almost patronizing smile and replied, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's good for the grass, natural fertilizer." She even laughed like it was no big deal. I was so taken aback that I didn't know how to respond. I tried again, pointing out that our community had rules for a reason and that it was more respectful to pick up after pets. But Karen just waved me off, saying, "He's a big dog. It's not like it's hurting anything." After that conversation, I decided to take a more subtle approach. I printed out a friendly reminder about pet cleanup rules and posted it on our community bulletin board. I even left a copy in Karen's mailbox, just to make sure she'd see it. But Karen didn't care. She kept letting Rocky do his business on my lawn without a second thought. Then, I started leaving little sticky notes on my door, just within sight of her front yard, with messages like, "Please clean up after your pet." But that didn't make a difference either. The breaking point came one Saturday morning. I'd planned to mow the lawn, which I normally enjoy because it's my time to clear my mind. But as I got closer to my yard, I noticed a smell that was beyond awful. I looked down, and there were multiple piles scattered across the grass. Not just one or two, I'm talking about at least half a dozen. I had to walk carefully, hopping around, trying not to step in anything as I made my way to the shed to get my lawnmower. But the closer I got, the angrier I became. I was spending my hard-earned weekend time tiptoeing around my own lawn because my neighbor couldn't be bothered to clean up after her dog. That was it. I'd reached my limit. I spent that whole day fuming. Every time I thought about it, I got more frustrated. I'd been polite, left notes, even printed out the community rules, and nothing had worked. It was clear that Karen wasn't going to change unless I made it impossible for her to ignore what she was doing. So, I decided that if Karen wanted to leave presents for me, I'd start returning them. I grabbed a stack of plastic bags, put on a pair of gloves, and got to work. Every time Rocky left something on my lawn, I picked it up, bagged it, and set it aside. I decided to collect an entire week's worth before delivering it back to her. I wanted to make sure she'd feel the full impact. Over the course of the week, I gathered every single gift left on my lawn. I stored the bags in a big plastic container in my backyard, which, while disgusting, felt strangely satisfying. It was like each little baggie represented one of my attempts to communicate with Karen that had been ignored. Finally, the day came. Late on Friday night, when I was sure Karen was asleep, I took the container over to her front porch. I carefully emptied every single bag onto her doorstep, spreading it out in a generous layer. For good measure, I also placed a couple of bags directly on her welcome mat just to make sure she couldn't miss it. The next morning, I was up early, sipping my coffee by the window when I heard Karen scream. I peeked out and saw her standing on her porch, looking horrified. She was surrounded by the mess that she'd been so casually leaving for me all week. It was like she finally understood what I'd been dealing with, and the irony wasn't lost on her. Karen spent the next hour trying to clean up her porch. She tried sweeping it first, but it was too messy to handle with just a broom. Eventually, she had to drag out her garden hose to wash it all away, and even then, it took multiple attempts to get everything clean. But the best part? Some of the other neighbors had noticed what I'd done, and they started commenting on Karen's habits, too. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd been dealing with Rocky's gifts. A few neighbors even came over to thank me for finally doing something about it. One of them told me they'd seen Karen rolling her eyes whenever anyone mentioned cleaning up after pets. After that incident, Karen actually started picking up after Rocky. I'd see her on her morning walks, plastic baggie in hand, making sure to clean up every time he stopped. She avoided eye contact with me for weeks, but honestly, I didn't care. My lawn was finally free of presents, and I didn't have to tiptoe around my own yard anymore. One of the neighbors even joked about starting a return policy for any other dog owners who didn't pick up after their pets. It turned into a running joke in our neighborhood, and every once in a while, someone would make a comment about surprise deliveries whenever they saw Karen and Rocky walk by. Karen eventually got the message loud and clear, and to this day, she hasn't left a single gift behind. My petty revenge worked, and the entire neighborhood is a little bit cleaner because of it. Looking back, I know it was a bit petty, but it was incredibly satisfying. Sometimes, no amount of polite reminders or friendly conversations will make someone respect your space. I tried everything I could to handle it nicely, and when that didn't work, I let my actions speak louder than words. And honestly, I do it all over again. Every time I see Karen walking Rocky and stopping to clean up after him, I get a little reminder that sometimes a well-executed bit of petty revenge can make all the difference. Thanks for reading, Reddit. Let me know if you've ever had to deal with a neighbor like Karen, and if you've got any similar stories. I'd love to hear them.